Any case law on to support that approach?
I can't remember.
No. Okay, that's all right. I note that you say the first issue in contention was a measurement. How did you measure it?
I measured it on a gross internal area basis.
Okay, thank you. You then go on, I presume it's the same case. Acting as expert witness, I advised the VT of the issues between the parties. The main issue about the 3 agreements with the scheme to reflect 40% age allowance. How does that come about? Please expand on that.
I undertook comparable research of evidence in the area. There were 3 properties within the same valuation scheme that the valuation officer considered to be of a similar nature to the
Were they nearby?
property. They were within 200 metres or so.
Okay, so on the same estate?
On the same estate.
Right.
And they had allowances of up to 40%, some slightly more, for apparently for age, because there are also quite modern units on the estate. So they dealt with that by applying big allowances.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you. I'd like to move on from local tax, because time is short, to landlord and tenant, please. There in the end. I apologise. Right, we're there. Landlord and tenant. You talk about you're aware of the landlord and tenant, the various pieces of legislation, 2754 and the Law of Property Act 69. Has there been anything since that? Any acts of Parliament that affect it?
I'm not sure.
No. Okay, fine. You talk about the main activities triggered under provisions including lease establishment, etc. You don't mention lease regearing. Are you familiar with lease regearing?
No, I can't answer that.
That's all right. You say you regularly read and interpret leases as part of the job, and you then go on to talk about the Wetherby property on the outskirts of Leeds, and you requested a copy of the lease. What did you find out on reading that copy of the lease regarding the rent review?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
No. All right. You go on to say it was an FRI lease within the 54 Act, and the rent review clause contained the usual assumptions and disregards. Could you tell me what the usual assumptions and disregards are, please?
They relate to rent review, is this to do with lease clauses?
Mm-hmm.
So user, rent review, repair, alienation, insurance, service charge.
Okay.
That's as far as I'm aware.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. You say you prepared and served notices to initiate the process and enter into negotiations. Now, you were acting on behalf of the tenant, I think, by reading this. Is that right?
Yes.
What notice did you serve to initiate the process? Under what schedule of the Landlord and Tenant Act?
Don't know.
Okay. Having served this notice to initiate the process and entering into the negotiations, and you got the information, what was the outcome of the negotiations? Were they successful?
No, there was a difference in opinion. I think to do with the how the property was considered to be, whether it was an office or to be valued as an industrial unit.
Mm-hmm. So what happened as the negotiations were not successful?
It went to arbitration.
Right. What's the difference between arbitration and expert?
Arbitration is they can only make a decision on the evidence that's put before them by the two parties. Expert witness can make a judgment on their own knowledge of an area, and also they can review and research other evidence.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to conflict avoidance, if I may. You talk about presenting as an expert witness at the VT hearing in 66 High Road, Willesden, which I think is that, is it not?
Yes.
You considered acting in the dual role, and you didn't. Do you regret that decision?
I don't know, because I think it was in the best interest of our client to act in that with a separate advocate and expert witness.
Right, thank you. You say you understand the expert witness as an overriding duty to the tribunal. How do you see that practically manifesting itself?
I'm unsure.
Let me give you an instance. Let's say that in the case of this shop, you knew that there was an extension outside the back that the VO was unaware of, and the VO asked you in tribunal, were you aware of the existence of that extension, which wasn't in your valuation? What would your duty be in such a circumstance?
I would have to answer honestly, and if I was aware of it, I would have to say I was.
Because, of course, if you'd inspected it, you should have been aware
Yeah.
of it. Yes, yes. Thank you. You say here also, I received a complaint from a client about the length of time it had taken to settle their rating appeal. Can you tell me a little bit about what happened over that and how it was resolved?
Yes, the client didn't understand that the rating process can be very lengthy.
Yes.
And I was able to discuss with the client how when we submit a proposal or an appeal, the valuation office will then programme your appeal into target dates, and that might not be for some time. And I explained that I hadn't been out to inspect because we deal with each property when it comes up for discussion. Mm-hmm. So I explained the process, and that resolved the situation, and I did not need to take it any further.
Are you aware that if your client is suffering extreme hardship, that the VO can be approached to accelerate the appeals?
Yes, I understand that.
But it wasn't appropriate in this case?
No.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to building pathology, if I may. You talk about common building defects appropriate to typical age and type, what sort of defect would you find on a say, a Victorian property of that sort of age?
We'd expect that the pointing is disintegrated. You'd probably expect that the sash windows might have perished, the timber frames possibly perished. You might expect that there might be some wall ties tying in the terraces with patches plates, because they have a tendency to move due to historical settlement.
Thank you. How does that fit with the rating hypothesis, in which the property is considered to be in good repair, when you've just told me it may have a list of these defects which are commensurate with age, not neglect, commensurate
Yes.
with age?
We have to value assuming reasonable repair.
Thank you. You talk as well about various methods to collect, store and retrieve information when carrying out inspections, for example using a damp meter, and it has its limitations. What limitations are you aware of with a damp meter?
They will only pick up surface damp, which is very close to the surface of a internal wall or a ceiling or wherever it is. So it might not pick up something that's inside the brickwork, or, for example.
Are there any other forms of equipment you're familiar with for inspecting internally the components of a building?
I use a laser measuring tool for measuring dimensions. That's generally internally.
Let's just examine that a little bit. Using a laser measure, what are the key things you need to keep in mind with using a laser?
That it requires calibrating
Yes.
regularly to ensure that and you can check that just by just testing the length that it provides with a ruler. If it's
Anything
not
else?
correct, if you're outside, they do have their limitations because
Yes.
you're not able to see
The red spot.
The red spot on
Anything else?
I can't think of anything else.
Okay. You say you've undertaken a survey of a first floor Victorian flat in Battersea Park Road for a home buyer's report.
Yes.
Can you tell me what is the purpose of a home buyer's report, please?
A home buyer's report is to advise a property purchaser. They're currently going through the process of buying property. They probably haven't quite moved in, and it's give them advice on whether the property requires. It's not as in depth as a building survey. It's just to provide them with an idea of.
Thank you. You also mentioned that the bay window was leaning forward, and you say it's common for bay windows to be built upon shallow foundations. Have you seen evidence of that?
Yes, it's quite common with older buildings that the bay windows will be built on shallow foundations, and therefore the rates to which each part settles is different. So that causes.
And you've seen the ground opened up to justify and prove that the foundations were shallow.
I went to a field trip to Swindon, to the National House Building Centre, and I was able to see firsthand.
Excellent, thank you.
The defect.
I'd like to move on finally to inspection, if I may. Inspection. you talk about house buyer survey, which we've just examined, but you also talk about undertaking inspections of retail properties, including a 2-storey office block in Wetherby. What's the major difference in defects and inspections in particular between dealing with commercial and non-commercial properties, particularly with inspections? Did you measure them the same?
Yes. So, retail would they be measured on different basis?
And where would the basis come from?
So the code of measuring practice.
Thank you. That's what I was after.
Right.
Thank you. You say that you make notes of the age, the type, the construction, starting from the roof down. Presumably you don't get on the roof, or do you use a drone? I don't know. How do you start, therefore, ascertain the details from the roof? What do you use?
Pair of binoculars, and just from a distance.
Yes.
And it's not within the scope of the report or the scope of the inspection to get up on the roof.
No, but you use binoculars rather than just plain sight.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Obviously you take photographs, I see that. You also talk about, I presume this is also properties in Battersea Park Road, about the limitations of the survey and whether it was suitable for the client's requirements.
Yes.
What would that entail, please?
I mean, mostly if it's a small flat, then a home buyer's report would be more than appropriate. But if you're dealing with a house that is maybe older and less common, and would be seen as a less common type of construction, then a building survey would be appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay, right, let's talk about valuation, Oliver. So, perhaps you can tell me what investment value is.
Investment value is the value of an asset to the owner or prospective owner, and its investment or ongoing investment capabilities.
Okay, compare that with market value.
Market value is the amount at which an asset would exchange between a willing buyer and a willing seller after proper marketing, between when both parties acted prudently, knowledgeably, and without compulsion.
Okay, so which of them is entity specific?
I'm not sure what that means.
Okay. How would you value an under-rented shop? Capital value.
I would research. I would calculate the market rent, and then I would research yields of investment retail property,
Right.
and apply the yield to the market rent.
Right. Okay.
Sure.
Assume it's not at the market rent. It's under rented. So there's some value to the reversion. How are you going to value it?
A term of reversion.
How does that work?
I would don't know.
Okay. What are the international valuation standards?
The international valuation standards are an extension to the Red Book, and they include just an extension of what's required within the UK.
Okay. Let's talk about the school valuation that you've done. How did you decide which method of valuation was appropriate there?
The school was currently valued on a comparable method basis, using rents of offices in the area, but I felt that due to its use and its the type of property it was, and the fact that it was let to a school which educated children right through from 3 to 12 years old.
It was a private school, was it?
A private school, which
And was it a rating valuation?
it was, yes. The private schools are commonly valued using the comparable method, but I was aware of a VT decision that had determined that certain private schools could also be valued on a contractor's basis.
Do you know how the market would value private school for an asset valuation or an investment valuation?
Depreciated placement cost.
Okay. In your preferred method, which was contractors, what were the line entries?
There's a gross external area, and the building costs derived from the VO's cost guide, but you could also use BCIS.
Yeah. Are they the
And-
same?
No, not that I'm aware of. And you would then adjust for obsolescence, which could be up to 50%, I believe.
What was
in
the
VOs.
obsolescence here?
I think we adjusted in line with the comparables in the VT decision, which were 50%.
So how old was this building?
It was late. It was just about 1900s.
And the VO thought 50% was relevant?
They were the comparables determined that VT decision
Right.
had 50%, and they were similar age
Right.
and type.
Okay, so we've got our rebuild cost and we've adjusted it by about 50%. What else do we need?
To decapitalise it at
Yeah. At
the
what
rate,
rate?
which is 3.5%, I think.
Why is it 3.5%?
Statutory.
Is it always 3.5%?
No.
No. Okay. And is that, you're missing land value. Where would you find comparables for land value for something like that? Did you just adopt, did the VO have a land value that you could adopt, or, but no, because they were using comparable basis, weren't they? So where did you get your land value from?
I can't remember.
Okay. What did you include in the valuation report on your valuation of the student property in Nottingham?
I followed the Red Book standard terms of engagement, and the so the identification of the valuer of the client, the date of the valuation, the property to be valued, and I formed it in the as set out in the Red Book, and advised the client on my opinion of value.
Right. When you valued this property, which figure, I mean, you did lots of different methods, which was very good as a check method, but which one gave the greatest weight? So which one went in the report?
The investment value.
Right. Okay, what did you advise the client to do with these properties then?
The client also requested to work out whether he should hold or sell the assets. So I undertook some analysis using a DCF method, and I was provided with his last 3 years of accounts. So I was able to work out rental growth over the last 3 years, and I well, the aim was to find the net present value. So I started with the
Well, look, let's cut to the chase. Was it a positive net present value at your target rate?
it was positive, yes.
Right. So did you advise him to hold or sell?
To hold.
Okay, let's talk about property records. 8 principles of the Data Protection Act, please. Okay, we'll move on from that.
Not sure.
What are the limitations to using Rightmove? You've been using Rightmove.
It's only predominantly, well, unless you're signed up to their membership, then you can access sale prices as well as letting prices, or marketing prices. And they only give the sale price and the date, so you don't really know much about property, so you have to make further inquiries to agents.
Yeah, okay. Right, let's move on to rules and ethics, which is on the first page. What's the CVS guidance on gifts and hospitality?
That if we receive any gift, that it should be logged in the gift register.
Do you get any gifts?
I haven't, no, unfortunately.
Never mind. Okay, and what procedures does CVS have in place to mitigate bribery?
I believe, as an RICS regulated firm, that they must abide by the rules of the
Yeah.
Bribery Act.
Yeah, well, one of those rules is that they must have procedures in place to mitigate bribery, so I was just asking
Right.
you what they were. Okay, now, tell me how you've promoted trust in your employer when interacting with clients in the VO. Well, I'll tell you what, look, let's choose another one.
I don't know.
What are the 5 global ethical standards?
The they're all going round in my head.
Okay, well, service, trust, integrity, respect, responsibility, okay?
Star.
Yeah, that's
So
it.
I knew.
You were struggling with trust, so how about integrity? I'm sure you act with integrity. Tell me about acting with integrity in advising a client.
Always ensure that I act honestly and with transparency and openness.
Right. Okay. Tell me about the conflict of interest situation you were involved in.
I was approached by a friend to undertake a home buyer survey of their prospective property purchase.
Yeah.
I advised them that I couldn't proceed for a number of reasons, and they were the fact that I was, there was a conflict of interest because he was a friend. I was not sufficiently qualified, and I also didn't have the appropriate professional indemnity insurance.
Yeah. Okay. Good. What does sustainability mean to you?
Sustainability is the is economic growth, but not at the expense of environmental and social impact.
Okay, that sounds familiar. Do you know what that definition's called? Okay, have you ever come across a building that has any sustainable features?
I haven't personally.
Right, okay. I bet you saw some at Swindon though. Can you list some sustainable features for me?
I remember seeing there were solar panel tiles. There's water systems to recycle water, that's rainwater.
Yeah. Right, okay. Just a quick question on signage, health and safety. If you're out on inspections and you see a yellow sign, what does that mean?
Yellow sign is a warning.
Yeah. And in terms of your feet, what PPE do you have for your feet?
I've still toe cap boots to use when appropriate.
Okay. What about the sole?
Sorry?
The sole?
I think the sole is, I think it's the sole and the
Right, okay.
toe, I believe.
Yeah, okay. Good. Right, practice management guidelines. What did you learn about teamwork from reading them?
That
That you can't remember.
I can't answer.
Okay. Well, you'll be glad to know, Oliver, that brings the torture to a close. Thank you very much, Saul, for being the water monitor as well. Now, you've made a number of notes. Is there anything that you'd like to revisit? Has anything come back to you?
Probably not.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. No? Okay, well, we can talk about it in the feedback. We'll now give Oliver his feedback if you guys would like to. But go for your lunch as well. So we're starting again with... Who's after lunch? I've lost my timetable again.
Peter.
Peter's after lunch at
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock. So you've got a bit of time to do what you need to do. That one was exactly an hour. But you make life hard for yourself when you do a quick presentation because it gives so much more time for the questions.
Yeah, I know. I it's 7.5 minutes,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
did it much quicker than I did last night.
Yeah, that's one of the key learning points, to be honest, from these sessions, because everybody's, apart from Rob, has done that. And
the more
Michael's
time
was
you
6
give
minutes. Yeah. So, yeah. But first things first.
That was hard.
How was it for you?
That was hard. I couldn't answer a lot of the questions.
Okay, so
I admittedly haven't done enough revision. I was spending quite a bit of time on that. But that was difficult.
So, do you think on the basis of that performance that you would have passed?
100% no.
Okay, I think I'm afraid we would agree with you there.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the presentation and the questioning. We'll both give you some feedback on your technique and then talk about the questions, and then we'll do competency by competency, okay? And then I will give you my notes and all of the questions that I had prepared, and I only scratched the surface as well, so there's lots more fun for you to have there. Right, so the presentation, the main feedback there is it's too short. However, there's easy ways to add to this. I would like you to spend longer going through your valuation and to add a slide about tone of the list, because that's central to this, and we haven't really... I know that we said focus on the analysis, but I think what's coming through is that...
Because I had to reflect that.
Yes.
So reflect on that in the end.
Yes.
It would make
Yeah,
sense to have
yeah,
it in
so
there,
but you talked through the analysis really well, actually, but there is room for more, because let's face it, there was only 3 to analyse.
I could have done it. I could have gone through it a bit more
Yeah.
slowly and
Yeah, so add to that. I like the big A-frame, actually, because I've been struggling to see them today. The structure was nice and clear as well. I knew where we were all the time with that one.
Yes.
For the comparable evidence table, I think maybe a handout as well, because again, it's really hard to see.
Okay.
Your eye contact needs to improve. You were looking at your notes too much, but then again, it's early days, so as you learn it, hopefully
Yeah.
you'll be referring notes less. Increase the font size. I thought the description of the weighting was really good, but I like that in your critical analysis as well. Yeah, so that's any feedback from you?
I thought it was very good. I think the tone. I think you've got an aspect with this you need to consider. I think you were treated harshly.
I think it's
personally.
awful. I mean, you had such
I'm
a
talking
strong
about
case.
a VT. I think you should have won. I make no bones about it. And I think the purpose of critical analysis obviously is to see, is criticise what you've done. And obviously there's a massive avenue for you to be questioned on what you understand by tone of the list, which is why I went after you like a rat up a drain. And the key thing is that
They all love tone of the list, though. You know, they always talk about that.
Oh yes, because it's indefinable statutorily. Now I think what I was trying to get you to say or to think about is that if it's 14 years into the list and a normal list is 4 years in and a normal list is only 5 years, if it isn't set at 4 years, you know, when the hell is it going to be set? 4 years, 11 months and 17 days? And I think that's the point, notwithstanding the case law, that you've got to sort of not major on, but be prepared to defend.
Yeah.
Because you may have an argument that says, well, I thought I'd explained it right, but quite clearly they didn't understand it or get to grasp of it. Because I would certainly refer to the VO's dual list of.
I'm worried about what I'm saying is coming across as being
arrogant.
Or
Yeah,
just being a bit like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yes,
No,
well, you
I-
don't want to do that, because
No.
you've probably got you won't know if you've got a VO assessor, because they just say, my name's Fred, they don't say,
Yes.
and I'm a VO.
No, but when you talk them through that list, you know, I think you can quite legitimately say that the only one that was agreed due to physical factors. All the rest were not agreed, and they've not been appealed.
Yeah.
And there is a case on if it's not appealed, it's after a period of time it's deemed accepted. But
Yes.
I think that's you're going to be questioned on tone of the list. I promise you.
Yeah.
If you don't, I'll be gobsmacked.
Yes. So, Norman, how did you cope with your questions on critical analysis?
Mixed,
Yeah.
I would say.
It's landlord and tenant is.
It was a
really,
disaster.
Whereas
Yeah.
I really don't know it very well
No.
because
No.
I don't have the practical knowledge to.
Well,
apply
you've got to.
some.
You've got to think about that, because you see what you've done here, what you've said is that I've done this and I've done that. You need to get a grip on what's a section 25 notice, what's a section 26 notice. I did do those slides and worksheets. You really, you know, those presentations.
Yeah.
You really need to go back through that.
I think, to be honest, Oliver, it's just revision, you know. Once you've got the confidence with it, you'll be able to
It'll
talk
flow.
more fluently.
Yes.
But try and find case studies as well, so you know, so that you can have, like, the textbooks often have case studies in them, and that way that you can, you know, talk a bit more knowledgeably about the motivations of landlord and tenant and why they do the things they do.
And have a read of that. I didn't get the chance to ask you the question. I was going to say there's a good bit in this talking about landlord and tenant. Where is it? Landlord and tenant in a fix, page 26, and it talks about. I'm going to ask a question to somebody else, but I'll simply say it says to you. Landlords are keen to improve returns, are considering using aggressive forfeiture cases, interim claims and contested lease renewals. Lease renewals. Up to date. Have a read of that. one
Okay.
article. Tell you
Yes, the
truth,
market's very much shifting back into
landlords'
favour. So a few years ago, they were breaking their leases and renegotiating terms and just threatening to go bankrupt and walk. But now it's very much more a case that landlords might even be starting to get premiums rather than having to offer rent-free
That's
periods.
what a lease re-gear is.
Right.
Where the tenant has got a few years left on the lease and says to the landlord, can I extend it? Now, that was to lead on to the present market situations where the landlord would say, on your bike.
Yeah.
That was...
Or not unless you give me a big premium, maybe.
That's it.
Yeah.
That was what the cost.
Yeah. So,
Landlord and tenant wasn't
it's
good.
a car crash.
Rating was so-so. Building pathology wasn't too bad. Inspections
Quite confident.
wasn't too bad.
I thought you were good on that. Yeah, I thought the LT was good, and you're good. You asked some really good questions there as well. On LT.
Sorry.
No, it's really good, and I love all
didn't
that.
know any case law. So
No,
I remember quite a few of your questions were, do you know the case law and this and that? And I was
Well, I'm going to tell you,
Didn't know.
if you meet the VO bloke and you've got the case law, you will shut him or her up, because there's
Yeah.
no point in asking you anymore. If you'd have said, yes, the four essential tests are reputable occupation, actual, beneficial, exclusive, not too transit, and the case is J. Lang and Son versus Kingswood Area Assessment Committee, 1948, I'd have said, I'll get my coat. Because there's no point in asking you much else.
You just need to know the leading case. You don't do all of them. So it's not.
But can you see what I mean? That shuts all that up.
Yeah.
yeah.
There's no point in asking you anything more than that. I've got to ask you something else.
But if you're going to use a case in your critical analysis, as you did with Lotus and Delta, you have to know about it.
About it, yes.
So it's a shoe shop in Leicester. And that was all I wanted you to tell me.
Okay.
I'll tell you what's interesting. It's mega interesting, if I may interrupt.
Yeah.
The agent went on rents and comparables, rents of let units, because it was a shell unit. The VO went on amortising the fit out and the basic rent, and ended up with a figure that was way out of kilter with the comparables, but went that route.
Yeah.
And I presume arrogance, and lost big time. And the way that was the correct way was to have regard to the basket of the evidence, not just the actual rent and the fit out.
Yeah. Yes, really. The VO love that one as well. Goes in all their critical analysis as well.
Yes.
So, Surveyor's Expert Witness, you were right to use the third edition when it was done, but it's April 2014 when the new one came in, but that's minor.
Yeah.
Local tax, your Harris graphics a great one to talk about all that to and froing. You were quite good on the profits as well.
Yes.
Your decap rate, you're a bit all over. It's 5% and 3.3% for health. Okay,
Right.
and it's statutory. So it's released in regulations
I was
when a new
getting
list comes
confused
in.
that rating it's one
Yes.
and normal practice is another,
Yes.
and that was just
Yeah.
in my head.
I
for some
realised that was how you'd got stuck.
reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, the sports bar was the City Duck case, of course. Because I want you to talk about it being valued as it
I
was.
understand,
Yes,
yeah.
and of course it was the use arm of Rebus that was
Yeah,
where the
that's
VO
what I was
fell down
after.
on that one.
That's what I was after.
So yeah, L&T was a bit, yeah, we mentioned that. Less said the better. Conflict avoidance, what did you reckon there, Norman?
Not too bad. I mean, better than L&T, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah.
nothing special.
Yeah, and he was all right with the difference between independent expert and arbitrator as
Yes.
well, which was,
Yes.
yeah. So yeah, the complaint's a good example is there as well.
Yeah.
Building pathology?
Yeah.
Yeah, not bad at all. A bit of waffle went in.
Yes.
What was that for, sorry?
The building pathology, when you were talking about the home buyer's report on
Yes.
advising the flat. You were very good on the bay window, even when Norman was pushing you. But don't say you saw it at Swindon, just say you've seen it
Yes.
on a property. Because it's in Swindon, but not in the National Build Centre.
Yeah.
But I was pushing you deliberately because I was wanting to see if you'd seen the ground opened up. If you've seen one where they've opened the ground up, end of.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was inspection was quite good as well, wasn't it?
Yes.
With his
Inspection
binoculars.
I like the
Yeah.
inspection. Yeah, it was okay.
Valuation, like everybody, it's a weakness.
Yes.
Which is why I've been going on about it from the beginning. It always is really difficult. So your basis was good. Entity specific is what investment value is. That means it's only specific to that particular person, and non-entity specific is market value. But that's how IVS refer to them. Term and reversion was a bit confused. We had to give up on that. And the IVS are not an extension to the Red Book. They're sort of an umbrella over the Red Book, and the Red Book's an extension to the IVS, if you like, in that there's more detail in the Red Book than there is in the IVS. DRC got a bit confused because you forgot the land value. But you know, when I was pushing you there on that, that's exactly how they do it. So I'm sorry if you felt it was a little bit aggressive.
No,
but, that is what they do.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
The answer is comparables.
Yes, it's not a hard answer.
Comparables.
Yeah. Data Protection Act completely went out of your head. And again, that's a no-brainer. It always gets asked. Rules of conduct. Yes. I wasn't very happy with that either. Especially when I had to give you so much help around the global ethical standards.
Yeah.
Your level 3 was good though with the conflict of interest situation.
Yes.
Sustainability, you were describing the Brundtland definition. I thought you were going to know that because you'd
Brundtland
that
report.
was, yes,
It's in
that's
my
it.
head,
1987, yeah.
Yeah.
You came up with one sustainable feature, but there's, as you know, there's all sorts. You were good with the signage. But you've said that I've read the practice management guidelines and I've learned about teamwork. And then when I asked you what you learned about teamwork, you couldn't tell me. So that's a revise your final submission thing.
Yeah.
But I think your technique is good. Did you get tired? Because you seem to really tail off in the second half of the interview.
Towards the end, I couldn't answer anything, and I just sort of gave up a bit.
You did, if I may say so.
But hopefully with more revision, you won't do that. But it's better to say don't know and then let us to move on, to be fair. But at the same time, you know, you can only say it a couple of times.
As well. Probably didn't help myself at all.
I said it to the others. If you have a stand-back approach to valuation, which is quite right, the case on that is Imperial College versus Ebden VO, which is a contractor's test case. And it's very good because it says one of the stages of the contractor's test is to stand back. That's where that is very useful. It's something like 1986.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, the agent who was dealing with it, I was lecturing his son at the time, and I knew John Ebden too, so I know a lot about the background of that. It was introduced for the first time as a stage. I can't remember whether it's 6 or 7 stages, and one of them is stand back.
Yeah.
Imperial College of Science and Technology versus Ebden VO.
Yeah. So what I have here for you is a list of questions that I've pulled out of your documents, and also the notes from the mock, which vary in quality according to who's talking. If I'm talking and writing, I can't handle it, but when Norman's talking, I can write quite good notes. But it'll give you an idea along with the video. But when you're talking about, say, local tax or building pathology, and you've got a bit more confidence, you do come across really well.
Yes.
Okay? So fundamentally, you've got what it takes. You've just got to get the time in to revise.
Yeah.
And these questions will be really useful practice for you as well.
I put a lot into my submission.
Yes.
I worked really hard on that.
Yes.
And when I handed it in, I had a weekend off, and I just lost that momentum.
Yeah.
And I found it really hard to get back into this.
Yeah.
So I think now it's...
You've got to,
Yeah.
or else all this has been a waste of time.
It's got to be full steam ahead. So yes, it's... I think that you've got a really good chance of passing, but the difference between passing and being referred is whether or not you can actually act on the feedback. And I'm sure you can, because you always do. The problem that you've all got is that you're just under so much pressure.
It's really bad at the moment because we can't put appeals in. Well, we can put appeals in after 1st of April.
So I understand. Yeah.
But obviously, it's limited to what our clients can get back. So we've having loads of, we have to go through every bit of our workload, check for invalid appeals, and
I appreciate that.
A bit of a stressful time.
Yeah.
No excuses. I'm just
Are you expecting it after the 1st of April to ease up a bit?
Because they'll
Nothing,
miss,
yeah,
must have missed the boat, so I assume, yeah.
Okay, because, we want you guys to, pass and become senior surveyors and start getting more money and all the rest of it. And it is going to take a bit of dedication and focus.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you back my copy,
It's fine.
simply because I've scribbled all over it. And it's the scribblings I want you to see. I would like it back at some time. I'll tell you why. We're going to use it with your consent to the future APC people.
Yeah,
and I
of
would
course.
like my copy, as opposed to
Yeah.
Kate, so we don't have to make another copy. That's really what
Yes,
it is.
because when we did yours, we only really had one, didn't we? That somebody had given me from the VO, and now we've got a much broader range. So thank you for allowing us
so
to use
you're-
that.
From as far as I know, they're all.
I'm
probably
giving it
different
to you,
because
but can I have